We have had some high-profile canonizations this year. There have been a number of saints added to the canon of saints in our church, some which have had great notoriety, others which we may have been surprised to discover were just all of a sudden handed to us. And I think that as Catholics, we take for granted that saints are such an integral part of our life. It's one of these things that people say, oh, you Catholics and your saints, and we kind of say, yeah, I know. But we don't necessarily understand what that entails, why that happens, where they come from. And so we thought it might be interesting to actually look at what are the steps that go into the canonization of a saint. What are the things that happen that bring these saints into the public worship of our church? Not worshiping them, but giving us examples to follow and having assigned to them liturgical feasts and masses that we celebrate in their honor. How do you come from being a regular ordinary person to someone like that? And so I thought we could walk through and look at some of these great examples. We know earlier this year, two former popes, Pope John the 23rd and Pope John Paul II, were together canonized saints, though under different circumstances. I will allude to that at the end. In our own country, we had the blessing of two Quebecers who are blessed, and I will get into that a little bit soon, a little bit later. The question of how they were canonized is again something that comes to us from a different angle. This Blessed Francois de Laval and Blessed Marie de l'Incarnation were given to the church as saints this year. And so we in Canada can rejoice in a special way that Canadians were added to the canon of saints. But what does all this mean and where does it come from? So I thought it would be valuable for us to walk through the steps and see what happens and what unfolds in the life of the church to bring about this beautiful thing that continues to happen and has been happening since our earliest days. So, the first step, you have to die. I think that's kind of a given. So, when you have died, the church then waits 5 years before doing anything. When some people die who have the renown of holiness, people say right away, they should be a saint. And so the church puts in place this idea, okay, well, let's see if in 5 years from now, we're still talking about so-and-so, or if he maybe just kind of floated away and we forgot that he was ever really around. For example, at the funeral of Saint John Paul II now, before he was a saint, obviously, people were proclaiming Santo subito in Italian. A saint immediately. We want him a saint now. And so for that reason, Pope Benedict XVI waived the 5-year waiting period because of the acclamation of all of the people of God in the universal church. So ordinarily, we keep this 5-year waiting period, but obviously the Holy Father can dispense from it when he sees that it would be valuable to do so. So after this 5 years has passed, and someone has died, a cause can be opened so that there can be beginnings of an investigation into the life of this person. And so what needs to happen is that a preliminary report will be submitted documenting the life of this individual who is being proposed for sainthood. So let's use a hypothetical scenario. A young priest dies in the Diocese of Calgary. Father Cristino Bouvette has passed away, and his renown for holiness has surpassed him, and everyone's talking about him. And so after 5 years, they decide, maybe it's worth putting out the feelers among the people of God to see if we should go somewhere further with this. And they say, oh yes, I remember Father Cristino. He talked with these FaithLife things. He always went over time, but it didn't mean he wasn't holy. And so the preliminary report is submitted, and the Pope receives this report. If the report is received with favor, their cause is officially opened, and that person is then known as the servant of God, Father Cristino Bouvette. So now the thorough investigation begins. Some things are going to be looked at and investigated about their life. If they were in a position to teach, did they give sound teaching? Unfortunately, my homilies are online now, so someone's going to go around after and start listening and hearing for any heresies to see whether or not this guy can be relied upon for the sound teachings of the church. Did he give good example? Was he someone that other people could look up to in their faith? And most importantly, did this individual go above and beyond in everything that he or she did? Was this something that was characteristic of them, excelling in the attempt to be virtuous and good and holy in every way? As this investigation unfolds, the Congregation for the Cause of the Saints will be compiling data and information to suggest one way or the other. And if it is determined that this individual certainly does seem to have been one who exhibited these characteristics of what we would call heroic virtue, that if they were teaching, their teaching was sound, that their piety was sincere, their example was wide known, then this person can advance to the next stage. The Holy Father will declare that person venerable. So here we have now Venerable Father Cristino Bouvette making his way closer towards sainthood, and the door has been opened to determine whether or not he in fact is in heaven. This is the question we are asking in the pursuit of a saint. To be a saint means to be in heaven. That is the basic definition of sainthood. It is for that reason that on November the 1st, every year we celebrate the feast of all saints. We are celebrating every soul that is in heaven, especially those unknown to us, because everyone who has made it there is a saint, whether the church has formally canonized them or not. And so in the pursuit of understanding whether or not an individual should be declared a saint, what we are asking is, can we be confident that this person is in heaven? And so then the interviews begin. And many people who knew this individual is going to be interviewed to see whether or not there is a corroborating story of this person's sanctity and virtue. So if I should have an untimely death, perhaps even some of you will be called into the tribunal to discuss the experience you may or may not have had with the holiness and virtue of Father Cristino Bouvette, Venerable Father Cristino Bouvette. And then at this time, begin to encourage prayer. Private devotion will begin to spring up to this individual, where we go to that person asking for their intercession. So fancy little prayer cards with my face on it will be on the very top, and there'll be a nice little prayer written, and maybe with a piece of my hair taped onto the bottom. And everyone's going to start handing out these cards and saying, pray to Father Cristino, pray to Venerable Father Cristino. See if you can have a miracle through his intercession. And so these prayer cards are going everywhere, and before you know it, someone claims that there has been a miracle. There was a miraculous cure. So-and-so went to visit their friend who was in a motorcycle accident. He was in his hospital bed, quadriplegic, and he goes over to him and says, listen, I'm going to pray with you now this special prayer to Venerable Father Cristino. I'm going to put this little card under your pillow. Tomorrow you're going to be healed. No, it can't be. I'm a quadriplegic. It's all over. And then in the morning, that poor fellow jumps out of bed and he says, look, I'm healed. Well, everyone is baffled and they can't believe it. This is the magnitude of the kind of miracle that is being looked for. We're not talking about the miracle of Mass ending exactly at 1 hour. We're talking about the miracle of something that cannot be explained by science or medicine. When it appears that there is in fact an authentic miracle, many professionals, even atheists who are professionals in their scientific or medical background, will analyze this scenario, and if there is no possible explanation as to how this could have come about without some other form of unknown intervention, the Church will take this to be a sign that Venerable Father Cristino Bouvette has certainly interceded on behalf of this poor fellow in the motorcycle accident, and it is for that reason that he has been cured, of course by God's grace, but through the intercession of this venerable person who has gone before. And so comes the next step, which is called beatification. And it is at beatification that a soul is declared definitively by the Church to be in heaven. This happened just recently, last month, when Pope Francis beatified Pope Paul VI, whom we now call Blessed Paul VI. The Church has formally declared that he is in heaven, interceding for us. And it is at that time that the name Blessed is bestowed upon them. They can be revered in our liturgy, but at that stage, we have what is called local cult. That means there is an understanding of their devotion and of their holiness, mostly in the place from which they've come. And so it is not very widespread. For many, many years, these saints that I referred to at the beginning, Francois de Laval and Marie the Incarnation, were blessed, but really only known in Canada. People elsewhere in the world probably hadn't heard of them. But now, having been canonized, they were elevated from the local level to a more universal level. And how does that happen? Well, word begins to spread. So the prayer card of now blessed Father Cristino with his little piece of hair taped to the bottom is being spread around all over the world, and all of these wonderful people who come in and out of Calgary start bringing them back to their home countries, sharing them with others. His intercession continues, and before you know it, people are claiming miracles from around the world. And when it appears that there is a universal sense of devotion to this person, and another miracle has been confirmed, we move forward to the final step, which is canonization. And it is at this time that the Church proposes this person as a saint for the universal Church, revered throughout all of the Church, and known to definitely be in heaven. And so, this is the long drawn-out process that often spans many decades and sometimes centuries, but it is certainly one that gives us the assurance that it is true, because it is one that is protected by papal infallibility. Our Holy Father, in declaring the saint, is using that very seldomly used power of his to declare something to be true, for sure, that this person is in heaven. And we haven't seen that happen more frequently than with Pope Francis lately, who is canonizing everybody, it would seem. And he's using a method called equivalent canonization, not even necessarily going to the investigation of many miracles, but looking at the universal devotion and declaring this person is certainly in heaven, and we can call them a saint. And so, my dear friends, let us strive to be canonizable saints, people who one day ourselves could have someone open a cause for canonization on our behalf. And even though, as you hear, there are many loopholes to jump through, at least we know that in the end we can be sure that this is a person in heaven interceding on our behalf.